Chicago, the South Bronx, or the Hill District right here in Pittsburgh have the tools that they need to read at the highest levels, to do math with great proficiency, and to perform academically with distinction. My view is that the National Urban League can and must bring together the best minds in education and public policy to continue the process of digging at the roots of the achievement gap, and to develop for this nation a comprehensive strategy for improving the equality and quality of public education. We will bring together governors, mayors, school superintendents, teachers and parents, and PhDs next spring near the anniversary of Brown v. Board of Education. It's not just about leaving no child behind. It's about pushing every child ahead, pushing every single child ahead. And we must push every child ahead if America is to thrive in the 21st century. At this summit, we will push every child ahead by addressing the adequacy of pay for teachers, by asking whether more hours of instruction should be mandated, whether universal access to early childhood education and after-school tutorials will help reading, whether more resources and new strategies are needed to deal with the problem of adolescent literacy. We must also ask why this nation keeps building fancy prisons. It's time to redirect those resources to building fancy schools. Fancy schools. Fancy schools with computers, playgrounds, and libraries, with everything our children need to compete and win in a challenging global marketplace that is the 21st century. In this new century, in the global economy, a child born in Birmingham will compete with a child born in Budapest. And a child born in Peoria will be challenged by a child born in Paris for the jobs of tomorrow. We will develop a second phase of the Campaign for African American Achievement, and this summit will not just be about talk, but it will be about developing an action plan to close the equality gap in education. It's empowerment time in education. Further, it is so crucial that we pay special attention to the plight of African American males. As a father of a 15-month-old son, this issue is close to me. Currently, and sadly, there are more than 875,000 African Americans incarcerated in this country. 1 of every 7 black males aged 25 to 29 is in jail. According to the National Association of Blacks in Criminal Justice, 29%, almost 1/3 of black males born this year, can expect to spend some time in a state or federal penitentiary. Now, while we have many high-achieving black males, as I travel this nation and I visit high schools and universities, I'm just struck by the shrinking number of black males in our honors programs or in college classes. This has real consequences for our economy, for our families, and for our cities. For too many of our children are growing up without a father in the home. Too many of our young males are drifting into the underclass of joblessness and hopelessness. We have too many of our black men as both perpetrators and victims of gun-related violence. And too many of our black males believe that manhood is defined by the ability to injure or damage another man rather than helping another man. Too much homicide, too many guns, too much crack cocaine. That is why the National Urban League will establish a national commission on the black male. We will ask experts both inside and outside of this movement to participate in this effort to develop real solutions to a problem we can no longer ignore. The problems of education, health, violence, joblessness, and incarceration are just too complicated and complex to deal with separately or distinctly, and we must deal with them together. When it comes to the problem of the black male, it is the National Urban League that must bring together the best minds from Wall Street to Main Street, from the world of government power to the world of hip-hop power, to develop the ideas and solutions to reverse this alarming trend. On this issue, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? For our black males, we need revival, renewal, and resurrection. And when we do for our black boys, and when we do for our black males, we do for our black girls and our black women. We must remember the link between each aspect of the family in America. Ladies and gentlemen, it is empowerment time for the black male in America. Second, it is empowerment time for the economy. There is fresh evidence that the economic downturn in this nation is threatening to grow sharper and widen the gaps that exist in access to capital for business development and jobs. Recently, Business Week reminded us as to how fragile economic progress for African Americans can be. The rising tide of the prosperous 90s was supposed to lift all boats. But unfortunately, in 2003, many boats in America have sprung a leak. And you know, when the yachts spring a leak, the rowboats are about to capsize. Despite an overall reduction in the poverty rate within the last decade, and since the stock market bubble burst in March of 2000, African American unemployment, which had been as low as 7%, a historic low, has skyrocketed to 11.8%, double that of white Americans. And despite the greatest economic boom in 30 years, gaps in economic well-being between African Americans and whites have remained fairly stagnant. For example, in the past 10 years during the great economic boom, African American household income gained only a little bit, from 63.4 in 91 to 64.9% of white household income in 2001. Yes, home ownership is up. Yes, business creation is up. Yes, incomes are up, and we celebrate that tonight. But the gap, the equality gap in home ownership, in income and wealth, has stubbornly remained the same. That is why our economic empowerment movement must focus on business development and entrepreneurship. Must focus on business development and entrepreneurship. And it must continue to focus on home ownership and closing the skills gap and closing the technology gap. To close this economic gap in America and to develop a new economic plan for this nation's cities, we will convene a second commission, and that will be a commission on jobs and the urban economy. And we want to look at 5 specific areas.